Good morning and welcome everyone for this webinar number 4 of our V2 Market webinar series. I am Brio Giard from smartEn, European Business Association, supporting consumer and digital-driven solution based in Brussels. V2 Market series relate to e-mobility services and more particularly smart and bidirectional charging. Today's webinar will deal more specifically with charging in buildings. What are the opportunities and implications for consumers building the electric vehicle and the energy transition in general? But maybe before going in the details of the different presentation, a few words about the V2 Market project. So the V2 Market project started in 2021 and aims at showing the benefits of considering EVs as battery on wheels, or to put it differently, decentralized energy resources. This means how EVs can increase the flexibility and the enhancement of the system efficiency, and also the V2 Market project looks more specifically at creating the proper and right market conditions for this vision to happen, to valorize both the EV and the battery for all involved stakeholders, including the EV driver and the market parties. So you can see on the slides how this project aims to achieve this vision is by including all the relevant actors in the EV value chain, tackling the different barriers and advance the regulation to meet the grid's need and facilitate the development on of V2X. Because as we see right now is that we have an increased electrification of our energy system, and we expect a growing number of EVs on our roads. And this means that we need to make the best use of our available resources, because this can create challenges for our grids. As you can see on the next slide, this is the daily cycle of V2G and V2B. So for those who are not familiar with it, V2G is vehicle to grid and V2B is vehicle to building. And these two terms are under V2X, vehicle to everything. And so this cycle show that how V2X behaves, the combination of services that V2X can provide, which means the reaction to price signals, the peak shaving, grid services, especially at distribution level. And maybe more important for today's session is the combination of V2X services, V2B services with solar panel. Which can enhance the self-consumption and can also act as backup when there is a blackout. And maybe last point is obviously V2X allows a better penetration of renewable energy, which also means avoiding curtailment thanks to the EV battery. And this also brings considerable benefits to the consumer. As you can see on this slide, I won't go into the details, but maybe just highlight a few of them. It's reduction of energy bills for the consumer, the reduction of the total cost of ownership of an EV, and also protection against price hikes. And all of these benefits is also what V2 Market is all about, and what V2 Market aims to highlight for consumers. On the next slide, you can see an overview of the consortium of the different partners of the project. So we have the municipality of Barcelona, Nuvei, which is an aggregator and energy service providers, Holaluz, an energy supplier, Hanese, which represents the energy service companies in Spain, Omie, the market operator, and this all of these stakeholders are supported by other partners, NRSafe, which is a capital investment fund specialized in energy transition, EcoSurveys, which is the project coordinator, an NGO specialized in energy transition, IDEA, the Energy Agency of Spain, which is especially relevant to exploit the project outputs for the Spanish market, and of course smartEn, which and we are an EU regulation expert active at EU level in Brussels. So here it is for the presentation of the consortium and the basic information about the project. Now I think we can go directly to the first presentation, which is about the EU regulatory provisions for the sectoral integration of buildings and transport via direct electrification. So maybe, as you can see on the next slide, a step back and a brief presentation on what is the European framework as of now. So we had during the last Commission, during the last 5 years, this big flagship initiative, which was the European Green Deal, where as of now, most legislative files have been finalized and adopted in the last year. It was really a big comprehensive package of slides aiming at tackling decarbonization of buildings, transport, and industry. The Fit for 50, and sorry, maybe the goal was to make the continent climate neutral by 2050, and also to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 55% by 2030. To deliver this big initiative, this big framework, the Fit for 55 was launched to deliver such a package with a few I would say headlines in different sectors that are highlighted on the screen, with some striking objectives. For example, the obligation to have zero emission new vehicles by 2035, 42% of renewable energy by 2030, 49% of renewables in building by 2030, and last but not least, 36% of energy savings targets for final energy consumption by 2030. So this is the overarching framework. Now, why are buildings relevant, and why are buildings relevant for e-mobility? Just a few data on buildings. It's a important sector to be decarbonized at EU level, because it represents 40% of the energy consumed and also 36% of its greenhouse gas emission. And related to e-mobility, buildings is paramount. First, because buildings, because 90% of all charging takes place at home or at work. So it means also that because of the size of the EV and because of the size of the battery, EVs can represent the main electric load in a building, which creates a new situation and challenges, obviously, but also opportunities. And I will deep dive a bit within this in a few moments. But theoretically, the EV can even, because of its big electric load, can even sustain the electricity consumption and pattern of the building for even several days. So if we go when we go on the next slide, just a few data on what are the legislations related to the charging infrastructure in the EU legislative framework. So we had three main policies regarding this. First, AFIR, which is the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation, which tackles specifically publicly accessible charging points. Then the EPBD, which is the main legislation related to buildings and buildings energy consumption, but also buildings decarbonization, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which tackles charging points in buildings. And finally, RED, the Renewable Energy Directive, which tackle non-publicly accessible accessible charging points. I will focus more specifically on provision from AFIR and the EPBD as they are relevant for buildings. So if you can see on the next slide what's in AFIR, and the relevance provision there is in Article 15. Although AFIR is tackling only public charging, so not much relevant for buildings, it also requires an assessment by member states on the deployment of charging points and also the evaluation of the potential of bidirectional charging. And such an assessment should consider all types of charging points, whether public or private, of all power outputs as well, including smart and bidirectional charging. And this is very key to have a clear picture on what are the needs per country, the potential per country, and eventually fix it. So you can see that the deadline is pretty soon, is by 30 June 2024, and then every 3 years the member states will reconduct such an assessment. So AFIR really is about assessing the potential and I would say the status of the charging points deployment. Now, if we go to the next slide, you can see more about DPBD, which is the cornerstone of the buildings policy in at EU level. So the goal, as I said, is to decarbonize the building sector and make buildings zero emission by 2050. It introduces such provision, the ones that you can see on the screen, to go towards this objective. So, for example, that from 2030, all new buildings should be zero emission, and also quite ambitious requirements for solar panels in buildings. So you have the detail on the screen, but basically you will have a solar mandate on buildings targeting different types of buildings of different sizes. So you can see that by 2027 the solar mandate will apply to all new public and non-residential building with a useful floor area of more than 250 square meters, which is good because combined with the electric vehicle, especially using smart and bidirectional charging, it can really multiply the benefits of self-consumption and enhance the flexibility of the buildings. So this is the part on zero emission and also on solar. And now if we go on the next slide, these are the requirements for the charging infrastructure as part of the EPBD. So I won't go into details on it because it's quite there are like several requirements on several buildings, but basically what we need to remember from this is that there are some big requirements on non-residential buildings, especially for new and renovated buildings, with the mandate to install new charging points, but also the mandate to have pre-cabling for certain parking spaces and ducting. The focus and the emphasis is put also on office buildings where you will have parking space as well. And what is good is that it also puts a mandate on existing large buildings. Residential buildings are also covered with a requirement to have one charging point for new residential building and also a requirement for pre-cabling and ducting. And what is important is that all of these charging points will need to be smart capable and bidirectional if appropriate. So this is really a good evolution, and this smart charging point is also aligned with the other legislation, with the ones I presented just before on AFIR and RED, where you have such mandate as well to have smart charging for new and renovated charging points. So now we basically have like a somehow harmonized EU legislative frameworks on the matter. And on building, it's very important that we have this mandate. As you can see, bidirectional charging is mandated if appropriate. What does it mean in practice? This is a bit unclear, because basically this directive will need to be transposed at national level. So it will be up to the member states to basically see when they consider the bidirectional charge to roll out bidirectional charging, when they find it appropriate. But this is already important that we have a reference to it in EU legislation. Now the next step, so DPBD is really recent. It has been published last month, and so we need, as I said, member state to transpose it in the national law. So it will be very important to monitor that the right elements are being enshrined in the national law and no loopholes created, especially when it comes to bidirectional charging, as vehicle to building can really provide massive benefits to the building and the consumer. And this was also demonstrated in this project. So now going to the next slide, just a reminder that to follow the V2 Market project on YouTube, here you have the QR code. So as I said, this was a project that started back in 2021. Now it's coming to an end in a few months, but there are still very important videos, deliverables that will be published. And on the next slide, this is very important. This is a survey on V2 Markets. It really doesn't take much time, just a few minutes, and you have different survey, one focusing on residential, one that is targeting municipalities, and the other one energy service companies. So it's very important that you share your views on it. So please don't hesitate to scan the QR code and participate. So now let's go further towards the next presentation. And my last point was making the perfect transition for next speaker, Robin Loos from BEUC, who represent the European association representing the consumers' voice, but he will explain a bit more in a few minutes, and who will tackle especially charging at home. So Robin, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brieux, and welcome everyone. So Robin Loos, I'm the Senior Sustainable Transport Officer at BEUC and the Deputy Head of the Sustainability Team. And when we're talking about charging for consumers, and that would be the point of my presentation, we're trying to stay very basic. We're trying to identify the problems and the hurdles that consumers actually face whenever they are charging on the street, or if they want to charge at home, at the office, at the supermarket. So today what I want to present is these hurdles and what needs to be done to fix them, but in a very concrete way, because we sometimes present V2G, V2X in general as something for the future or something for the geeks. But actually, consumers do have tons of questions about charging. Electric cars, although they bring huge financial benefits to consumers, will only be a mass product in a few years' time. At the moment, we have early adopters who might be accustomed to V2G, to new technologies. But if you ask consumers, and that's what our members in member states do, if you ask them about charging, they do have tons of questions. So that would be my first point. Before talking V2G, before talking installing a charger, before even talking about buying electric vehicles, you have tons of questions to address. What is V2G? But also, what is my car capable to do? And that relates to the question you see, or the comment you see on the top left, the dealership. Consumers, when they go to the dealership, sometimes the dealer himself doesn't know what the car is capable to do, what the capacity of the battery allows the consumers to do. We rely on data that is not always accurate. So before all this, there's a need to address a very practical question that if you buy an electric car, and that was actually a question from my parents when they changed their car, do I need a new electricity contract? Can I find such electricity contract? Am I able to benefit from cheap electricity? I have solar panel on my roof. How does it work? How do I make sure that I can charge for free, or that I can use my solar panels to the best extent, that I can use my car to the best of its capabilities? And to answer all these questions, we need to start with one very basic principle that is missing currently in many member states, is really enabling dynamic tariffs. We need them for consumers. At the moment, many countries, many member states have not transposed the directive allowing for dynamic tariffs to appear. Many energy providers still don't do it. If you look in Belgium, the country I'm in at the moment, you can have those in Flanders, but you can't have them in other regions of the country. And I'm saying this because, as Brio was mentioning in the beginning, EVs are such or represent such a load that having dynamic tariffs is a game changer. On the slide here, you can see a picture from a study we recently published that was based for heat pumps. But in this study for heat pumps and what tariffs could actually benefit consumers, there's a huge chunk of electric car consumption that we have taken into account. That's the little top bars of the chart that you see here. And whenever you have an electric car, you can actively reduce the cost of it via dynamic tariffs. And this does not mean being constantly looking at the way or how or when you charge your car. This could be done very simply by just guessing what would be the best time to charge. And that is the starting point, making it easy for people to charge at a lower price when renewables are here or when tariffs are really at the lowest. That is the first point I wanted to really mention. The second point, and I think once you get there, we have now a broad legislative framework, as Brio was mentioned. But we need to go into the details of it. EPBD is here, very good, but the implementation phase now is going to be crucial. It entered into force 2 days ago, and we know that member states will now deploy and present reports and deliver on the ground. But what we see as consumer organizations as well as one of members have already mentioned is that on top of the targets that we will have, X amount of charging points in X buildings, pre-cabling, ducting. What we need is now to tackle some very practical issues. And that's why in the EPBD, in the reports of member states, we need to address new policies. At the moment, there are really high installation costs for charging options at home. And there's some sort of premium for all the early adopters. Sometimes an unjustified premium. So you pay extra for a charger, or you are incentivized to pay for a charger that is beyond the power output that you actually need, depending on your usage. You are linked to the energy provider sometimes that that is selling you this charging point. But on the contrary, sometimes you have subsidies, tax cuts for installing such charging points, and it's unclear. They appear and disappear. Belgium, again, is a clear example of this. We had good incentives to install these charging points. They're slowly being taken away. You can do that also in offices with tax cuts for companies. But as the same it is the same for incentives for buying an electric car. These incentives are not clear in the long run and really destroy the trust of people in electric vehicles. There are lots of administrative barriers. It is mentioned in the EPBD, but there are lots of these barriers for people living in apartments. The whole hurdle that you need to go through for installing a charging point on your parking space or in the common parking space is sometimes really a sign of this technology not being entered in the life of people. And of course, the electricity market, we need the electrical market, apologies, needs to also allow for lower income consumers to benefit from the capabilities of smart charging, but also of V2G. There's for the moment an electrification by the top. The more expensive vehicles are being electrified, and we have a lack of small and medium electric vehicles that have also these capabilities of V2G for the future. That is the main points I wanted to make, and to summarize what I've been saying. When you're talking about charging at home, at work, at the supermarket, start simple. First, make these dynamic tariffs available. Make sure that people can benefit from the increased amount of sustainable energy sources out there, and making sure that they can benefit without high technology, without deep knowledge of the electricity market. And then make it real. We need more chargers. We need more chargers at home. That's certainly the responsibility of individual consumers. But we also need chargers in the workplace, at the supermarket. Everywhere, every time the car stops, we need to be able to find a charging solution. And then, of course, to benefit from dynamic tariffs, from V2G, from smart charging. And then you need to build trust. Insist on the simplicity of use. One of our motto here at BEUC is to say that living sustainably could actually mean living better. And we truly believe that electric cars can really contribute to that. Just plugging in your car will make it so much easier for you than going to the petrol station. If only everything, the whole system was made for you. Create this sense of control about your car, and the data you share, the trust, of course, and of course, reward flexibility, and make sure that if your car is giving energy to the grid, to your home, you are incentivized to do so, and you're not double taxed, or you don't pay twice for charging, discharging, and charging it. Thank you for your presentation. I'm happy to go a bit deeper in the details of it during the question. And thank you, Rio, for inviting me today.
Many thanks, Robin, for your very insightful presentation. And indeed, we share the same conclusions. EPBD is key. Now it needs to be implemented properly. Maybe just before going to the next speaker, I would just like to let you know that you can ask questions in the chat. In the chat, there is also several links towards the YouTube channel, and also to our surveys. So please don't hesitate to ask a question. We will have a Q&A session after all the presentations. Now, without further ado, I will give the floor to Joanna Mundo-Olive from EcoSurveys, which is the V2 Market Project Coordinator, and who will dive into the social acceptance of V2G schemes. Joanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bruno, and hello, everyone. So I'm going to go deeper into some aspects that Robin also introduced. Well, as Priok explained before, B2 Market is a project that wanted to assess the potential of electric vehicles as a storage and flexibility resource. And as you know, when flexibility markets enter into play, this will entail the reshaping of several market relationships between different stakeholders. So we wanted to develop and make some progress in developing these market conditions to set what we can advance. So when this is put in place, it's easier for the market uptake. So we already presented the consortium. Just a brief note that the fleet owner involved is not the municipality of Barcelona, but the Barcelona metropolitan area, so involving 36 municipalities. And going directly into the topic, so the first step that we did in the V2 Market project was a market study that was composed first with an assessment through desk research on previous research on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that this V2G service would have. And then we performed several interviews and focus groups with key stakeholders, so mainly end users and different profiles of potential aggregators. So the main takeaways from the SWOT analysis, so the main strong points for the EV owners that we identified is indeed the decrease of energy expenditure and the decrease of the upfront costs, but also the increase of public image. And this is especially relevant for example, for public bodies who have the mandate to do things in that sense and also to exemplify this kind of transition policies. And it also can empower and promote active participation of the energy consumers. For the aggregators, the main strength is that it will open a new market opportunities that can complement or make viable other services they already offer. So it can provide a competitive advantage for them. And for the DSOs, the main strong points are the potential to solve problems related to grid congestions and eventually decrease investments in grid operation and management. Considering the main weaknesses, is there's still the issue of the potential battery degradation, or at least the perception of this, because there are some several studies that point out that if you charge and discharge between a range of 20 and 80% of the battery, this wouldn't have any additional negative effect than using the battery just for traveling. But there's still this perception that this can be a risk. Also, another weakness is there's still a comfort disadvantage related. So comparing the internal combustion vehicles with the electric vehicles, and especially for long travels, related with the lack of charging infrastructure. So we seem to be stuck in the chicken and egg problem. Also, the upfront costs are still bigger, and there are also still some issues related to the interoperability. And another weakness is the lack of expert knowledge, especially on electricity markets, from different or some of the potential actors that would took the role of aggregator. Then as opportunities, so external factors that the context offers to deploy the V2G services is that if you look back 6 years or 8 years or 10 years from now, there's quite a lot of increased public awareness on climate change and the need for action. We have also seen how hardware costs have been decreasing, and they are expected to be decreasing in the coming years as well. And there's also the need of balancing the electricity system, especially considering the massive introduction of renewable energies in the system. And of course, all the policies related to decarbonization of mobility. And as main threats is the lack of knowledge from the general public on electricity markets, on V2G, et cetera, et cetera. So all this sounds very complex to the average user. We also have to consider the slow pace of market uptake of this kind of solutions that really changed the way that they have been doing, so behavioral patterns. And there are still some data privacy and ethics to be tackled properly. So then when we did the interviews and the focus groups, what we did is to identify which could be the first adopters of the V2G and V2X in general. And we identified mainly fleet owners, either public or private, and especially fleets with heavy-duty vehicles with larger batteries and predictable mobility patterns. And also fleets with long parking periods. So for example, airport trucks or bus fleets, etc. And actually, if you look at other markets where V2G is operating, namely the US, for example, the main customers of the aggregators currently are fleets. We discarded initially facility managers and parking managers. We think that they are unlikely to uptake the V2G at the very first or an early stage because of the short parking periods, because there will be the interoperability issues, etc., and all the burden of regulation for this short parking would not be interesting enough. And finally, at individual level or at citizen level, other key adopters could be either individual persons or energy communities that have already photovoltaics, so PV, because it would indeed help them taking more advantage of the PV generation. So now I'm going to briefly explain the main results of this market study in terms of the owner's perception. So what we identified, as we said, is that even if you show and the end users studies that conclude that if you do it in a certain way, there's not additional battery degradation, there's still this fear and there's still this perception. But, and this is very important, they didn't see it as a critical unsolvable risk. So if they are compensated properly, this shouldn't be an issue for the uptake of B2G. Then one thing that is also very, very important and was very repeated along the focus groups and the interviews, it was the simplicity and the clarity of usage of the service. So on the one side, we cannot expect that if we want a massive uptake of V2G, that the average end user understand the electricity markets. This is simply sociologically not viable. But so we have to develop business schemes that make them easy to use without the necessity to have this knowledge. And also in the contracts between the aggregator and the end user, it's very important that the remuneration schemes are very clear, but also the own commitment is very clear, because it entails behavioral changes from the end user, for example, related to the plugin patterns. Then another issue is related to the range anxiety. So there's still this feeling among end users that they don't know or they don't feel in control or totally in control of the energy of the batteries. So it's very important that also through the contract, it is stated that it will not disrupt the operation of their vehicles. So to create this trust that Ruben was mentioning before. And then as main incentives, we have, of course, the reduction of upfront costs, of upfront and operational costs. But we also have to take into consideration that if the aggregator remunerates the end users through a financial remuneration, it would probably be taxed, so subject to taxes. And this also could discourage some end users. Okay, so other things that the participants in the market study pointed out was that it can be interesting, of course, by environmentally aware people, because EVs has the potential to decrease the emissions produced by mobility, but the increased amounts of battery waste may dissuade them. So if we want to present this business case to this target group, it is very important that also the reuse and recycling of and all the cycle of the battery is well defined, and in order to provide an interesting business case and value proposition for environmentally aware people. Then, of course, there's a stronger business case when B2G is coupled with photovoltaics. From the one side, it can help taking greater advantage of the energy produced during the day, and you can you can use them at any other time. And it also reduces the exposure to price volatility. So it makes it quite stronger for the end users with PV. And then it is important to consider that the social pace for uptaking this kind of solutions that involve cultural changes is it tends to be slow. So we have to consider it and foresee it in the business plans for developing this service. For example, if you want to pass from ownership to securitization schemes, this is a big change for the end user. But something that I know that sounds very obvious, but the plug-in habits. So in the pilot, we have had some issues because the end users are not used to plug in when the battery is fully charged. And this brings me to the last issue, which is the fleet challenges. So we identified fleets as main key adopters or first adopters, but there could be misaligned incentives between the owner of the fleet and the end user. So it has to be very well defined, and trainings or some sort of engaging activities have to be done for the end user. And finally, this is my last slide to present the potential aggregator's perception. So from the aggregator perception, the main issue was related to the legal uncertainty, the lack of regulation at member states level, of the flexibility markets, of several technical aspects related to V2G. There's also the interoperability issues on the level of the sockets, connectors, communication protocol, etc., but also on the business model level, considering some kind of roaming agreement between companies, so an end user can be compensated for their B2G use in any charging point. And also another challenge would be that some profiles of potential aggregators, for example, ESCOs, would be very interesting aggregators because they already know the energy market and they already have a pool of clients, but they might not be used to operate in electricity markets. So this will also entail a learning curve from some profiles of the stakeholders. And finally, the data access and ethics. So there have to be policies to ensure the equal access to information if we want to promote the independent aggregator profile. Because for now, for example, if the aggregator is taken by the aggregator role is taken by an energy retail company, they already have the end user information, the energy information from the customers, or the DSO, they have all the information. So they have a competitive advantage to offer them products than other independent aggregators. So we think that some kind of independent data hub or something should be created in order to avoid these asymmetries of information access. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Joanna, for this presentation. We'll go now to the next speaker, and I will give the floor to Hugo Magalhães Madureira from ANESE that will talk about the relation between V2B and the energy performance contracts. Please, Hugo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Brio. So I'm Hugo Magalhães, Hugo Madureira. It's easier. I'm technical director at ANESE. ANESE is the Spanish National Association of Energy Services Companies. So where the title of this is the integration of vehicle to building in EPC, energy performance contracts. So I'll just start off very briefly by reviewing what EPC means, or ENPC. EPC is the flagship contract type for an ESCO. An ESCO is by definition this natural legal person that delivers energy services in the user's facility or premises and accepts some degree of financial risk in doing so. The payment for the services must be based either in whole or in part on the achievement of energy efficiency improvements and on the meeting of other agreed performance criteria. So the EPC is, as I said, of the flagship contract for ESCOs, but it's not the only one. ESCOs can also use other contracts, energy supply contracts, power purchase agreements, well, all of these. In EPC, savings are measured in kilowatt hours, so in energy, and the investment can be entirely assumed by the ESCO or by the client, depending on the savings model. But basically, in terms of working, this is how it goes. There's an initial. This is the amount of energy cost for the customer before the ESCO contract and any action is taken. So at the beginning of the ESCO contract, a series of investments in energy performance enhancement measures is made. And as a result of that, energy costs are decreased. The margin between what the costs used to be and what they are is the savings, and a part of those savings goes to the ESCO to repay their as their fee. After the contract ends, then the savings belong to the customer 100%. The EPC is a complex contract, and it involves a study. So it involves these 3 steps in general. It starts with an energy auditing, evaluation, definition of baselines and all that, and then a proposal that must be agreed upon by the customers, obviously. And then then there's the installation and the contract, the contract duration phase. So this is just to show that this whole process results in an ESCO having a very intimate knowledge of the customer's energy consumption patterns and methods and all that. V2 building, well, it was already explained here. I will just say that this is just one of the names that can be given to the V2X technology family, and basically what defines the name is just the entity with which the vehicle interchanges energy, or better, the entity which coordinates the vehicle energy interchange. So V2P just lets the vehicle discharge its batteries at request to supply energy to the building it's connected to at a given time. So the vehicle's batteries can effectively be used as storage by the building. I'll just give you an example of how this could work potentially and what benefits it could have. It's a very basic example. It's not meant to be highly accurate and realistic. It's just a concept. So just imagine you have an office building at 7 in the morning when everyone is arriving with the people that drive their own cars arrive with their electric vehicles, park it at a parking facilities in the building, and plug their cars into the V2P chargers. At this time, there's a series of coincidences. So everyone arrives at roughly the same hour, which means a stress peak for the air conditioning, because people arrive with metabolism rates higher than the usual sitting down, standing metabolism, and with coats and everything. They have to take that all off. But before they do, they add load to the air conditioning, and then there's computer starting, there's lights being suddenly lit, there's coffee machines going. There's a peak of activity before the building settles into its usual state, and that peak of activity reflects into a peak of electricity consumption. Since this happens in more or less all the office buildings, this is a grid-wise observable phenomenon. And at the same time, solar resource is still very low because the sun is low to the horizon. So what results is that these peak of activity and peak of consumption matches a peak of price on the grid electricity. So what the building can do is command some of the energy stored in these cars for a short period of time to do peak shaving, and flatten the building's consumption curve viewed from the grid, and so manage lower power peaks and lower energy consumptions from the grid. Then once the building is in regime, and the sun is high in the sky, and there's a lot of solar energy available, and energy and network prices grid prices are low, then these cars can recharge what they discharged previously, and more. So how do vehicle to building and EPC match? So what we've seen so far is, okay, so the building can use my car's battery, and that's good for the building, but how is that good for me? What can I get from that potentially? So if we go back to the previous example, let's assume that there's an ESCO that was contracted by the building owners to conduct a refurbishment of the building through an EPC, and this refurbishment, apart from many other measures, includes the installation of the bidirectional chargers. What this allows is in an EPC, there's one thing I forgot to mention, is that although the savings are measured in kilowatt hours, energy costs may also be one of the parameters that is analyzed in the contract, and upon which there are some targets. So in order to optimize energy cost, the ESCO can use, as we've seen before, the EV batteries to do peak shaving, and for instance, as a payback to the users, they might allow them to charge for free or at a discounted rate, or they could offer some other benefit. But I mean, this is the most obvious one, and so. The cars actually integrate in the building and are managed as one of the building's resources, so that energy flows from the EVs to the building when the grid price is high, or when solar energy is scarce, and then the EVs recharge their batteries when grid price is low enough, or when there's excess free solar energy. Basically, this is all very, very good, provided that obviously there are some conditions that must be met from all sides, and this ties to what Joanna was saying, that both EV owners and the ones buying the service must be assured that, for one, EV owners must be assured that their batteries will not be abused, will not suffer short cycles of high power charges and discharges that will dramatically decrease their lives. The contract between the building, or the EPC, or the ESCO in this case, and the owners can also see that there's a minimum charge level that can be configurable by the user, and that, for instance, if I plan on having a trip, or if I have to use my car midday, I can remove my car from the pool with an app or something. That all that is very easily solved, and that I must have a compensation if the charge level at the end of the session is less than at the beginning by whatever reason. I mean, if I stop, if I need to take my car when it is discharging and it ends up that my battery is the lowest charge state than it was before, I must have a compensation for that. And on the other side, ESCOs must be assured that the EVs have enough usable charge to start with. So between the charge that they bring and the charge that users allow use, that it is enough for the needs of the building. And they can also maybe set a limit to the amount of free energy that's available to charge the EVs to prevent a net flow of energy out from the building. So to prevent people with bidirectional chargers at their home to like steal energy from the building with their cars. So this is this is a very, very brief example. I'll be delighted to answer all the questions you might have.
Many thanks, Hugo, for your presentation, and indeed more questions. Please don't hesitate to ask questions during the Q&A session in a bit. And I can also see that in the chat there are quite some good interactions. So nice to see that all of this presentation raised the debate. For the next presenter, I'm happy to give the floor to Alejandro Close from Olaluz that will dive into the different retail offers regarding EVs in buildings, especially in the residential sector. Alejandro, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Berk. The future belongs to those who see the possibilities before they become obvious. This is a quote by John Sculley, the CEO of Apple Computer in the 80s and 90s. And I thought that would be ideal for this situation, because I would like to ask you to put your future glasses and join me in this presentation, as we are all aware that V2G is not here yet, and that electric vehicles have, if they've not stopped growing the share in the market, I believe, or at least here in Spain, it has slowed quite a bit. So what we think is that the paradigm must be shifted from the current paradigm of people with that it's interested in moving from one place to another. When they use a vehicle, they go to a gas pump, they fill down the tank, or at least try to get it as filled as possible, so they don't come back soon. But with electric chargers, the first paradigm that is shifted is you don't actually need to have your whole battery charged every time you charge the car. You just need to have the amount of energy that will allow you to move the kilometers that you're planning to move. And this is also quite compared with solar panels, because when you are charging at your house the electric vehicle, it's great to have your own generation in your roof. So the paradigm, it's not only to change how we use the car, but also it's a whole new opportunity that brings into the market. And this is because we stop looking at the EV as just a tool to move or to transport, and we start to see it as a part of a whole new system that would be what the aggregators do, or what in the virtual power plants. So from now on, I think that the presentation will be focused on what we call distributed generation, that includes solar panels, batteries, EV chargers, heat pumps, and consumers on the other side that kind of take the energy produced by the solar power and the batteries, and the batteries from the EV chargers and the standalone batteries. So we actually need to transform the way we produce and consume electricity, not just for decarbonizing, but it's also interesting for the end consumer, and we will see how. By switching from a centralized oligopolistic system to a decentralized network of decarbonized, democratized, and affordable clean energy, we are also saving in the whole system a lot of energy that is usually lost in the transport of the energy. In Spain, I don't know if our friends from all over Europe, you know that we call ourselves the country of the sun. There's a lot of sun here, and that's why our beaches are so famous. The opportunity here to have distributed generation, including, as I said, the vehicle to grid connected electric vehicles, is massive. The market in solar panels is vastly underpenetrated at only 4%. It started in 2019 because we had a tax that was called the sun tax that wouldn't make interesting to install solar panels and electrify your consumption. But it has seen quite big growth from 6,000 installations in 2019 to 217 in 2022. And because of geopolitical tensions and interest rates going up, 2023 was very impacted. But the market is huge. The market size in Spain is around 10 million feasible rooftops, and we think that we're gonna achieve 1,500,000 by 2030. The International Energy Agency also agrees with this. They've forecasted that by 2028, an increase in 46% in the amount of distributed generation to be deployed, which compares to just 5% for the utility PV and a decrease for the wind onshore. So if we manage to actually do the virtual power plants with all the different parts that they have, the electricity demand would triple from now to 2050. And you might ask, why is this? So we have the numbers. In Spain, in a 20-year time frame, normal houses have an electricity bill of 84,400 euros. If you install solar panels, you save 30% of that, so it's 61,400. If you use an EV car without bidirectionality, but just using the energy from the solar panels to charge the car or compensate with the grid if you charge at night, you would save 70% of the whole energy bill. That would be 27,800. And if you manage to electrify all your consumptions, mainly with a heat pump, then you will save 100% of the 84,400 euros in the 20 years. So it's not only good for the environment, it's not only good for the network, but it's also good for the end consumer to adapt this new paradigm of doing things in a distributed way. We're now doing the pilots in the V2 Market project. Hola Luz is doing the residential part. We have 20 residential customers that what we're actually doing is trying to find the levers so that they allow us to decide the time at which we start and stop charging. Because as you know, if we don't do anything like this, people, when they arrive home, they immediately connect their cars, and there's a peak load in the grid. So what we're trying to do is to minimize this. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see how we started the pilot project. This is the time and date that customers by their own, they decide when to charge. And well, it's very curious. Friday at 1 to 4 p.m. it's the highest. We believe it's because people are preparing for the weekend. So in the levers that we're trying to find, and we believe it's a very valuable work before we actually deploy the technology, is to see first how just doing B1G or smart charging would work, and then translating it to V2G. So we also have the injection part on the market. Once we have all the levers, then we can act on the different markets for example, with V1G, it's very easy for us to work on the wholesale market. And the day ahead, we know the price of the electricity the next day, so we can calculate when's the best time and to end and to start and end the charge based on the red lines that the customer has given us. And then we are also doing pilot projects with the local flexibility markets with OMIE. That it's our first experience, and it seems that we're learning a lot with doing this and already looking at what we're going to do in the future. All of our conclusions will be shared. And please, I ask you to fill out the V2Market survey. I don't know if Brooke was supposed to do this, but thank you. Any questions you have, I'm free to answer. Thank you.
Many thanks, Alejandro. If you do it as well, I don't mind, as long as the people are incentivized to come and join the survey for V2Market. Now we are reaching the time. Thanks for everyone's presentation. Now I will invite all the speakers to turn on their camera for the panel debate. We have around 20 minutes of Q&A session. So please, attendees, if you have any question, please write something in the chat. Maybe, as I see that speakers are turning on their camera, a general question to start on my side would be that what is your opinion on the main barrier faced for the development of on-site charging in buildings? I don't know who would like to take this one.
You can start if you want.
Yes, Joanna, please.
So in many countries, it's still the regulation at member states level, and not only for flexibility markets, but also for the technical regulation specifying the requirements for bilateral chargers and the specificities of B2G. And there are also some enablers that can be promoted at member state level, for example, for the wholesale markets, to decrease the minimum bid requirement. So in order to facilitate for distributed resources to enter in those markets, and also lower granularity of the products in the electricity market. So instead of having 1 hour, having 15 minutes, for example. And then also a big barrier, even when this is achieved, it will be, of course, the cultural change that it entails, I think.
I can jump in because I want to say a few words about the cultural change. I think the barriers really prevent this cultural change to happen, because what we are interested in as BEUC and another consumer organization usually is what we call the dropout rate. When you make a purchase decision, or when you you try to book a ticket for your trip, there are a lot of elements that you take into account, and the main one is how easy, how successful am I going to be in my quest to buy or to book a trip. The same happens for electric cars. You want to change your car, you start looking at what's on the market. You have a first barrier, which is the availability of small, medium electric cars that people are actually looking for. You have a lack of second-hand options as well. And then you say, okay, I have the chance to have a garage. How can I actually make that happen? And then you face another cost element, but you also face a lot of administrative tasks. You know you're going to get subsidies, but you don't know exactly where you're going to get those. You know you're going to have to pay upfront and then get reimbursed. This is all these processes that really needs to be smoothed out. And then one element for that is really the implementation of one-stop shops for people. One location online or at their local authority where they can find all the information very easily. You would then alleviate so much of a burden, and the same could apply for people living in apartment buildings, where this is becoming, well, this already is quite a nightmare. So you should not underestimate how difficult the thought process can be before even having the means to do it. And then there's a lot that can be done before even talking a pricing element.
Thanks, Robin. And I think in this aspect, V2 Market already published a few very relevant paper on like the different cultural and ethic barriers to V2G and V2B. Maybe a question that I'm taking from the chat, I think that is targeted specifically to Alejandro. Which local flexibility markets do you offer electricity from V2G to? And have you just intended to do this, or are you actually acting in the wholesale and local flexibility markets currently?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you for the support that also received on the chat. Thank you. About the local flexibility markets, yes, we are in Spain. We are doing a simulation with OMIE. It's not, we are actually acting. Everything is simulated, but we're learning how these simulations would work. I've been just an observer of this because the energy management team at Oraluz is the one that's been doing the auctions and everything. So if you have a more specific question, I can come back for it.
Thanks, Alejandro. Maybe other question. What further incentive should be made available to the consumer for using V2B, and how can businesses support this development? If you want to tackle it, maybe Hugo, for this question, you would like to take it, since your presentation was mostly focusing on V2B and you were sharing some very relevant insights on it.
But you mean which incentives for the end user?
Yes, exactly.
For the vehicle. Official incentives. I don't know, like tax cuts for acquiring V2B capable cars. That's all I see. I mean, everything else is part of the business plans of the companies that do that, and they need to be good at incentivizing the users if that's their business plan. So that part is taken care of by nature. So I would say, as for, I would just insist on what everyone else has said. Infrastructure and regulation; those are the two main hurdles. Without that, you can't start to do things at a scale that will deliver good results. That's
all right. No, that's already a very good
skipped
answer.
a bit the question, but
no,
I'm sorry.
No worries. Also, question for all the panelists. Which recommendation would you suggest to national government regarding the type of policy needed for the development of bidirectional charging and its related services? So really at national level more than European, because we saw that especially with my presentation and Robin's one, that we have now the PBD. It has been just entered into force. We have also other legislation that tackles somehow bidirectional charging. So what do you see at national level on specific recommendations?
I can start with that.
Yes, Robin, please.
So, as you said, we mentioned the barriers to installing chargers, and then I see that too in the chat. Someone is talking about this bidirectional capable chargers that could arise and which will arrive once the market or the trend is increased. But there's one key enabler that for the moment is simply not working well in many countries. Is how do we treat prosumers, so people who generate electricity and consume electricity as everyone else. There has been an upward trend of installing solar panels. A lot of people have done so, and now they're facing a very complicated tax environment for how much they can use the electricity. In many countries now, we see that sometimes the grid cannot really support the amount of electricity generated in some local areas, which leads to people not being able to benefit from the energy that they are supposed to benefit from because it's on their roof. And then you have some taxes for you as a prosumers delivering energy to the grid, which can be understandable, of course. But if that plan is not made clear from the start, at the moment you make this decision of installing solar panel, then you're losing a lot of energy, and you create this sense of consumer thinking they made a mistake or they haven't been told the truth in advance. And that's a real pain point. The installation, the taxes, but also then the flexibility and how much do you reward this. And there member states have so much possibilities to make it clear for people that if you produce more than what you consume, you should be incentivized to store that energy. But if you give it back to the grid, then you clearly should be rewarded because you actually deliver a service to the grid. And I think for me that's the main element to tackle now, because the lack of option of dynamic tariffs, I was just saying, but also the lack of option of benefiting from flexibility is clearly a deterrent for people. They will not engage in such thing, knowing very well that they don't have the options to do so.
Yes, many thanks, Robin. Full alignment on this. And if I may complement, we also arrive at this point where we see a lot of tensions on the grids, a lot of the tension, notably at distribution grids, with our electrified assets. And we know that we will need to reinforce the grid somehow. So whether upgrade it or build new lines, but this cannot be the only option because this will be very costly. First of all, and this is the point also of bidirectional charging, of using the available resources and having an objective beyond transportation and helping the grid in doing so. And on the objective, I think member states should realize this potential and maybe change some technical rules, for example, in the reward of system operators. I don't want to go too much into details, but there are like some quite sometimes old rules for system operators that are incentivized to basically use a large generation and do not consider enough the potential of bidirectional charging. And in this aspect, I think member states should really carefully consider such a potential. The EU legislation is the first step in this aspect, but now it needs to be really first well implemented and well considered at member state level. Joanna, please.
Yes, I wanted also to reinforce this aspect that you are mentioning. So in addition to all that has been said, there's still a culture where DSOs solve their problems by more investment or asking for more investment. So we have to also incentivize DSOs to manage the congestion problems through flexibility, not only through more investment. And this entails a change of mindset also from this key stakeholder.
Exactly. If you have any inputs, Alejandro, Hugo. Yeah, Hugo, please.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Just on what Joanna was saying. I mean, it's if we are going to believe the objectives of going fully electric on the mobility side, then if you just do a simple exercise of opening the window, looking outside, and counting how many cars you can see, and then someone was on the question on the remarks on the chat. Someone was saying that 7 kilowatt per charger was reasonable for usage. I mean, if you multiply, say half of those cars by 7 kilowatts, and you come up with absolutely crazy numbers, and you'll find out very quickly that it's crazy to pretend that networks will be able to grow to accommodate that at a feasible pace. So I mean, distributed generation, flexibility. You have to manage consumption. If you're going all electric, you have to manage consumption. I would say.
Thanks, Hugo. Other question. We have 10 minutes left for our Q&A session. Maybe I'm just trying to go through the chat if there was any interesting question. There was a question, but it was quite well commented on why don't we have bidirectional charging ready EVs for like all EVs. Why indeed? If I may briefly reply, this would be definitely a great incentive. We should not either be naive because it also implies some challenges for notably the just replying on smartEn side, but there's some challenges, of course, for the car manufacturers. But as it was mentioned in the chat, for example, Renault will launch his model Renault 5 by the end of the year, which will be bidirectional charging ready. And you have most of the actually big car manufacturers that already committed to have at least one of their model that will be bidirectional charging ready, whether this year or in the upcoming one. So I think there is this recognition from the car manufacturers about the potential of V2G and V2B. So it's coming slowly, and I can tell you that to be also in the sector for a few years now, that it's really a very good evolution compared to a few years ago, where V2G was still somehow considered as a thing for the future, somehow unrealistic innovation. And now, like, it's taking a bit of time, but at least you can see that all manufacturers are getting committed in the topic. But yes, ideally, having all EVs bidirectional charging ready would be a big incentive for the technology to strive. Robin, please.
Yes, I do share your comments. I want to revert it though, because on one of the replies in the chat mentioned that if consumers were asking for it, that would clearly incentivize. I think it contradicts a bit the picture we have from our members on the ground as to, do people know about V2G, and do people understand? They do understand the concept. They might understand the concept per se, but do they understand the possibilities and the potential of it? This is something where the usual challenge between is demand driving supply, or is supply actually creating the demand? And then I would be on the second option there. And one element that I think is very much important to consider is linked to also one of the points I was raising into cars, electric cars, being sometimes and too often way too big for the needs of consumers, and implementing V2G technologies and smart charging capacity, of course, on the side for these lower end vehicles, and the need to increase the amount of small battery car is important, because while we can acknowledge that the trend is towards bigger cars and the sales show that, one needs to remember that the vast majority of people don't buy new cars. And this will not suddenly change because of electrification. On the contrary, so the used car market is still dominated by small models, and I think this is very important that these small models also allow for flexibility, because there you can have extra gains from your electric car.
Hugo, you want to complement?
No, I'm sorry. I was reading the reply on the chat that someone commented that, well, yeah, my numbers were obviously very naive, very, very simplistic, but this person just objects that from studies, hard studies, the power per car is like half a kilowatt on average. and that if we manage to, and that's with dump charging, so stupid charging. If we manage to smart charge them, then we might be within the actual capacity of the grid. Well, that's exactly my point. If we manage to smart charge them, we have to smart charge, and we have to start managing consumption in order to be able to not have to invest on the grid. That's I was oversimplifying it, but that's exactly what I wanted to say.
Thanks. Good. Thanks for the clarification, Hugo. And thanks for your answer, Robin. I obviously align with you. I think first consumers at the moment do not necessarily know the technology. I'm quite sure if I talk to my parents about V2G, they will look at me. What are you talking? So there is like this big awareness raising, but also from businesses to be done, and when we will have like the more barriers we will remove from it, both from the business side and from the consumer side, the more like value there will be, and the more disseminated it will be towards the consumer as well. Sorry, I was mute. I was just saying there is like 4 minutes left. So if you have a question, last question to ask to the panelists, this is the moment. Otherwise, I have broad questions, but if you can be short, if you could summarize briefly in 3 main takeaways the benefits of bidirectional charging for the end user and for the system, so we have like a good conclusion for this panel debate. And if each panelist could say something, this would be great. I don't know who wants to start. Hugo, you still have your hand raised. I don't know if it's related to it, so but you can start then.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I just left the hand up. That 3 takeaways or benefits for bidirectional charging. I mean, for the end user, it can be the benefits that it depends. It will bring benefits depending on the modality of use, but it will have to do with a lower total cost of ownership of the vehicle. For the system, it's the enhanced flexibility and capacity to withstand higher loads overall without investing greatly in infrastructure. That's what I.
Thanks, Hugo. Joanna?
Yeah, so main benefits for the end user, I would say, of course, the affordability gap between electric cars and internal combustion cars could be solved thanks to the additional remuneration. Then the fact that it involves or it entails new opportunities for several actors in the market will mean that new business models will be deployed for the uptake of electric vehicles, such as servitization and this kind of thing. So this will offer new opportunities also to the end users to access to electric cars. And then finally, it will also increase or facilitate the uptake of prosumership at individual level.
Good. Thanks. I see some alignment, of course, between the different benefits of the different panelists. Robin?
I won't tell you 3, but I will tell you 1. Is what it should be and what it can be is simplicity for users. It should really be the removal of all pain points of refueling your combustion engine at the moment. It can be so simple. It can bring so much benefit that, as I said at the beginning, it could make living more sustainably also simpler and better for people. So that element of simplicity must be the guiding line of how we implement V2G when talking to consumers.
Many thanks, Robin. And on my side, obviously, I 100% agree with what the other panelists said. Simplicity and easy for the consumer. It's very important that it's easy to access these offers and that he understands quickly. Like just taking some companies now that are proposing some V2G offers where the charging is free. I think that's quite clear for them what is the benefits of V2G, and that's very understandable for the consumer. And for the system, I would highlight for the grids. We see like a lot of tension on the grid, especially at distribution level, a lot of pressure, and bidirectional charging can really be a big asset instead of a burden if there is uncontrolled charging. So I would really highlight this point. Well, I think we are reaching the end of our event. Thanks to every presenter for their very insightful points and presentation. Last moment is to scan the QR code and please participate to the survey. This webinar will be online on the YouTube channel of V2 Market. As I said, very interesting publications. Also, don't hesitate to check the website. Very interesting publications that are like free to everyone. And voilà, we will have a closing event the 10th of June that you will be able to participate online if you want to register. So please do not hesitate to follow more webinar news for the last months of the project. Many thanks, everyone. Many thanks again to the panelists, and I wish you a good end of the day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.